الحمد لله وكفى والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والذين جاهدوا فينا لنهدينهم سبلنا سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Those who strive in our way, we guide them on our paths. That's the ayah that I recited. And today I wanted to talk about something which is very, very important to us, not only in our progression in our Islamic studies, but also in our daily lives, in everything that we do, in all the undertakings that we pursue. And that is the concept of Barakah. So there's two ways by which humans attain. One is through their effort, and the second is through Barakah. Okay, so if you have a goal, or you have some idea of something that you want to achieve, there's two things that come into that. One is your effort, and two is barakah. These are the two key principles that lead to anything you do. Even if you're studying for a test, or you're going to college, or you're studying the deen, or you're memorizing the Quran, whatever you're doing, there's two aspects that are key. One is your effort, and two is barakah. Now your effort's obvious. And in this world, whoever makes effort, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set up the world, is that whoever makes effort, they get results. If you make an effort in something, you will get a result on a 1-to-1 ratio. So for example, you look at the big textbooks. Let me just give you my own personal examples from my field because that's what I know best. So in medicine, you look at textbooks of medicine and you'll see that somebody spent 30, 40, 50 years of their life devoting it to one field in medicine, just say the kidney, and within the kidney, they have so many subspecialties within the kidney itself, like this type of disease in the kidney, that type of disease in the kidney, that type of disease in the kidney. So you have people who devote their lives to just one aspect of that, and then they write chapters in textbooks, they do research, they have laboratories where they investigate, and they have their patients, and they're specializing in that subject. And you see the results of their work. They may write 5 or 10 chapters in various textbooks. And so that is a result of their direct effort. That's the first thing. And the same thing with anything that we do. Even the deen. If you put effort into something, you get a 1-to-1 result back. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, but that's what you can expect. Now, with that effort, if you add something called barakah, then your individual effort gets multiplied several-fold. So let me give you some examples. Do you understand the principle? The principle that you need two things. You need effort and you need barakah in order to attain anything. If you put in effort, you get a result. There's no doubt about it. The whole reason why the world is dominating the Muslims is not because that they're blessed and Allah's blessing them. And there's a couple of reasons, but it's not because they're blessed. It's because of their effort. They're putting effort into that thing. I mean, effort is so powerful that if you put effort into a piece of metal, you can make it fly. I mean, look at an airplane. If you would have told people 500 years ago that this is metal, people will put effort into this metal, and they will construct something that can fly, and it will weigh tons and tons. It will be so heavy that, 50 men couldn't carry it, yet it will fly through the sky. People would laugh at you. But that's the result of effort. It's the result of thousands of people putting their minds together and continually making effort, and that's called science. And that's what the whole branch of knowledge is. It's called science, and thousands of people have put their effort into it. More than thousands, but by now probably millions. So wherever you put your effort, you get a result. That's obvious. Number two is that when a Muslim puts his effort into something, but connects it in with barakah, then he gets results which are greater than 1-to-1. It's not one person doing one thing, it's one person and he gets the results of 100 people. Or maybe 10 people, or maybe 1,000 people. Now take, for example, the way you look for these examples is you look at, for example, the life of the Prophet ﷺ, who was the most blessed person to ever touch the face of this earth. He had the most barakah, if you want to say that. And in fact, his whole life was a mechanism of attracting the barakah of Allah. So what did he do? Within 23 years, he established such a movement, or he established such an environment within just Mecca and Medina, that it later went on to take over such a huge portion of the world that we sit here today 1400 years later and still say his name and say sallallahu alaihi wasallam and still dream of being at the time when he existed, etc., etc. So that was the blessing that Allah put. I mean, that has never happened in history, that one person starts an ideology and within his lifetime it conquers a huge portion of land. That's never happened. I mean, communism, somebody founded communism, and later on communism, some other people and other people and other people, and all these people put effort in, and they eventually established it in certain areas. But within 23 years, for an idea to grow and then establish itself like that, that's never happened in history. So the point is that the barakah of the Prophet ﷺ is what allowed this to occur. And it's the barakah of the Prophet ﷺ, the blessings that he had associated with his work, that allow us 1,500 years later or 1,400 years later to even sit in a gathering like this. I mean, imagine how many things last 1,400 years. Things come in and out of fashion. How many ideologies have lasted 1,400 years? And to the pristine, and with the degree of pristineness and clarity that exactly what the Prophet ﷺ said we try to do to this day. We haven't altered it even one step. Or at least there are groups of people in this world that still follow the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ exactly as he laid them down and exactly as the Sahaba traversed upon them. That's exactly a sign of barakah. Take another example. Look at any of our ulama in the history of our deen. Anyone, any major alim in the history of our deen, and look at the books that they wrote. If you look at the greatest PhD, MD PhD, who's working at the greatest institution in the world, he may have written 1 chapter. He may have written 2 chapters. He may have written 10 chapters. It's very unlikely that he wrote a whole textbook. And if he did write a whole textbook, it will be with the help of 1,000 other people, with the help of editors, with the help of computers, with the help of typists, with the help of a printer, etc. So he'll have written maybe a 1,000-page textbook. Now, you look at the ulama in our deen, in our history, and you see that not only did they write textbooks, but they wrote hundreds of textbooks, hundreds of books about the deen. And the books that they're writing, one book is not 1 volume, or one book is not 20 pages. One book is 8 volumes, 9 volumes, that they themselves wrote by hand at a time when there was no computer, no electricity. Rarely did they have enough food to eat. They didn't have all these people where they could look up all this information on the internet and look up all this information in different libraries. Everything was coming from their own head and from what their teachers taught them. Take, for example, Maulana Ashraf Ali Tanwi, and I've given this example before as well. He wrote 1,500 and something books in his lifetime. Right? 1,500 and something books in his lifetime that he himself wrote with his own hand. 5,000 books he was associated with, in the sense that his students, or he sat with the person and gave them the information, etc. So let's just take this 1,500 books. Now, of those 1,500 books, some of them are full tafsir of the Quran. Some of them are translations of the Quran. Some of them are massive shuru of hadith, more than 1 volume. So if you look at all the work that he did, I mean, I was calculating this one day. He must have written a book a week. Right? We don't read a quarter of a book a week. He wrote a book a week. Now, he's not writing things that people wrote before. You read his works, it's all new. It's all incredibly deep. So he's writing on a whole different level. And this is all of our ulama. You look at what Hafiz ibn Hajar wrote, and you just look at just his explication of Bukhari. Not all his other books. I mean, he did all the study of hadith. He did all the study of tafsir. He wrote so many other books. Just his book on the Tashri' of Imam Bukhari, and it's 8, 9 volumes, and it's so dense and so thick, and it's so complete that you have to just submit to it when you read it. And you couldn't even read it. If I said to you, your life goal is to read that book from cover to cover, you still won't complete that goal before you die. You still will not complete that goal. It's such a deep book. And that's just because we don't have the barakah in our time that they used to have. So the secret to this deen, in your approach to it, in your approach to your daily life, etc., is barakah. That is the real key thing that we aim to achieve. And the way you take this barakah in is by following the footsteps of the Sahaba who followed the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ. Essentially, their lesson was a lesson of barakah. What did they teach you? How do you maximize the barakah in the food that you eat? And for those of you who are here in the i'tikaf, we talked about those ahadith, right? لَوْ سَمَّا لَكَفَاكُمْ لَوْ سَمَّا لَكَفَاكُمْ. There was a person who came, the Sahaba were sitting, 6 of them or 5 of them. There were enough food for 2 bites in front of all 5 of them. Big Sahaba, ready? I mean, these people were hungry, big hungry Sahaba. They didn't eat 3 meals a day. Right? And they were very well, their bodies were very physically, they were strong. There were 2 bites sitting on 1 plate in front of all of them. All of them were sitting and waiting to eat. an Arabi, one of the Bedouins came, and he took those 2 bites and he ate them in 2 bites. He took the whole plate and he ate it in 2 bites, which means 2 bites for a normal person was available. And the Prophet ﷺ, after he ate that, said, لَوْ سَمَّا لَكَفَاكُمْ. If he would have taken the name of Allah, لَكَفَاكُمْ. All of you would have been able to eat from it. And there's another hadith that we talked about in maybe that particular class, that the Prophet ﷺ was sitting with a group of Sahaba. And one of the Sahaba is commenting on the food, and he says, I had never seen in my life food with more barakah in it at the beginning of the meal, and food with the least amount of barakah at the end of the meal. Meaning they were sitting, and there was food in front of all of them. And in the beginning it had so much barakah, everybody was eating from it. The whole gathering was eating from this small amount of food, and it wasn't disappearing. And after that, they stopped eating. After that, at the end of the meal, all of a sudden people were coming in, there was no food left. So he asked the Prophet ﷺ, what happened? The Prophet ﷺ said, in the beginning of the meal, all of you said Bismillah. But then at the end of the meal, somebody came and didn't say Bismillah and began eating the food. فَأَكَلَ مَعَهُ الشَّيْطَانِ. So shaitan, he ate with him. So the whole lesson was in barakah. Now why is barakah important to us? When you have barakah in your life, then your money goes much further than even the billionaire. The person who has barakah in his life but makes a halal, healthy income and does it submitting to Allah, to the Messenger and to the Prophet, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that $30, $40, $50, $60,000 income has more barakah in it than the person who makes millions. You achieve more with that wealth than the person who makes millions. Because you've connected it to Allah. It's a whole different game. The peace that you get in your heart from $50,000, $40,000, but with halal and with barakah, will be much more than even a billionaire. Similarly, when you do your studies, when you work, when you're studying at school, if you use means to establish barakah in your life, so you avoid sin, and you remember Allah, you keep your prayers intact, you fast in the month of Ramadan, you give away in charity, and you devote yourself the way you should be devoted, you model yourself after the Prophet ﷺ, then you bring barakah into your studies. Then the person who sits and studies all day, you just have to study 2 hours and your mind focuses and you suck everything in and you understand it at a whole different level. And otherwise, people can study for days and they don't even know what they're reading. They still don't know what they're reading after they've read it for days because there's a barakah factor involved in that. Similarly, in your sleep. People sleep 9, 10 hours a day and they wake up and they're dead tired. And there's other people, they sleep 2 hours a night and they're fresher than the most fresh person. Why? Because there's barakah in their sleep, because they know how to sleep. Knowing how to sleep itself is part of the deen. That how did the Prophet ﷺ sleep? What did he sleep on? Which way did he face? What did he say before he went to sleep? What did he say when he woke up? What do you think? Why did he do those things? Was he random? He was never random in anything that he did. Everything that he did was a type of ibadah. But when he slept the way he slept, he did so because he was teaching, he was first of all attracting the barakah of Allah. And second of all, he was teaching the ummah. That this is the way that you establish barakah in your life. This is the way that you establish barakah in your sleep. So his 1 hour of sleep at night and 10 minutes of sleep in the afternoon was much more sufficient than our 9 hours of sleep in the day. Why? Because he drew the barakah of Allah into his sleep. And so that 1 hour, it sufficed him. And our history shows thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands, generation after generation after generation, those people barely slept. Yet they lived in the dead of heat. They didn't have a car. They didn't have air conditioning. They didn't have water available to them from a pipe in their house. Everything that they did, they had to go and get it. They had to make massive effort. Yet, despite all of those difficulties and despite the tiredness that's associated with all of those difficulties, they still slept 1 or 2 hours. And on top of that, they knew how to sleep and they knew how to live their lives such that they would wake up for tahajjud without an alarm clock. Allah would wake them up naturally because they knew the secrets of establishing barakah in their lives. And we, with 50 alarm clocks, cannot even get up for tahajjud. What a difference. One is a person sleeping after that much fatigue, that all day he's sitting in the heat, he doesn't have an AC. He has to go by horse where he wants to go. He's studying in the dark under lights, under the lantern. This is all about barakah. That's the secret of the deen. And barakah doesn't come through technology. People say, we have technology now. Technology doesn't do anything. That's not where barakah is. That's the barakah of the dunya. It's a dunyawi mechanism. It has nothing to do with the barakah of Allah. Yeah, if you learn the mechanisms of connecting to Allah, and you put that barakah in your life, then technology can help you. There's no doubt about it. But look at the barakah of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, that they established the deen, and not only the deen, but the true deen, and not only the true deen, but the depth of the deen, that those people then sacrificed their lives for it, with nothing, with no computers, no internet, no faxes, no phones, no printing presses, no printing presses. And we, with computers, internet, faxes, phones, printing presses, etc., are unable to even establish a deen within our own lives. Why? I mean, you should just sit down and reflect about the world and how it's changed, and you have all these means at your disposal, yet you're unable to do the things that you're supposed to do. It's because it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with those means. Yeah, those means are important. They do play a role, but the primary role is that you connect yourself to Allah, and that you establish this barakah in your life. Now, when you do that, you will begin to do things in your life that you will never believe that you could have done. And I saw it with my own eyes, because I've seen kids, they come to the madrasa. I mean, when I'm studying in the madrasa, this father brings this child to the madrasa. The guy's illiterate. The kid is completely illiterate. All right? He's failing school. His whole community calls him the dumbest of the dumb in his community, in his village. And they put him in the madrasa, and within 1 year, the guy's reading, Mukhtasar Quduri and Kafiya in complex classical Arabic. And then you see the same guy, he's a college student, all right, he's reading multiple languages. Not only does he know English, he knows German, and then he knows the language of mathematics, he knows the language of science, he knows the language of physics. You talk to him about electrons and he knows what you're talking about. You talk to him about algebra, he knows what you're talking about. You talk to him about proofs in geometry, he knows what you're talking about. He has air conditioning, he has all the facilities of the world, and he tries to study Arabic, and within 5 days he gives up. What's the difference between these two people? One guy is completely illiterate. You would never, if you had to rank the people of the world and say, let's make a line, who deserves to learn Arabic, or who has the ability to learn Arabic, that boy would have come at the end of the line. And the person with the college degree and all the different facilities available to him would come at the front of the line, and yet Allah chooses from the back of the line and blesses that person with the ability to read His book and His messenger's words in their original language. It's all based on barakah, and it's based on niyyah. So we have to learn, we have to begin to understand that this is not a game anymore. And the way you achieve is by submitting to the methodology of the Prophet ﷺ. When you look like the Prophet, when you walk like the Prophet, when you eat like the Prophet, when you dress like the Prophet, you automatically attract the barakah of Allah towards you. And I'm not making this up for my own self. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself testifies in the book that the external appearance of the Prophet is important. What about Ya ayyuhal muzammil, or Muddathir, or these ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, oh one wrapped up in a cloak. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself is testifying or calling the Prophet ﷺ by his external appearance. Not by, oh Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but by his external appearance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Prophet ﷺ by his clothing, by something so superficial. Right? People of the world today say, well, that's clothing is superficial. Clothing has nothing to do with anything. Well, why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressing the Prophet ﷺ by his clothing? Oh, one wrapped up in a cloak. If his clothing was petty and superficial and had nothing to do with it, then why is Allah showing in His book, for 1400 years people will continue to read it until the end of time, that I'm addressing my messenger by the clothing that he wore, by the shawl that he was wrapped up in, by the cloak that he was wrapped up in. Everything that the Prophet ﷺ did is part of his connection to Allah. It was not random. The way he slept, the way he ate, the way he dressed, the way he used the bathroom, the way he walked, the way he talked, the way he looked. قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهِكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself says, we have seen your turning of your face towards the sky. Even that much, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala testifies to in the Quran, that we see you turning your head to the sky. Even that action itself. And I mean, the Sahaba understood this. And the generations of ulama that came after them, they understood it. It's not a debated thing. There's no debate among the ulama. No ulama debate this. It's people that make up their own thing in their own head that, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ has nothing to do with the deen, and then they apply themselves to the technology of the world and use that as a means of achieving barakah, and nothing happens. Nothing's been achieved. If you want to look at history and look at who has achieved anything, It's always the people. Who has revived the deen? It's always the people that are on the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Sharia, and emulate of the Prophet ﷺ. Read Imam Ghazali's books. What does Imam Ghazali say? What's the history of Imam Ghazali? He says that I spent years searching for the true deen. Imam Ghazali's story is so important for us because what does he say? Imam Ghazali was someone who was the master of knowledge at his time. He was the head of his madrasa. Now, madrasa at that day and age is like college today. Imagine being the dean at Harvard. That's what Imam Ghazali was. Because at that time, everybody went to madrasa. When a child was born, the parents said he's going to go to madrasa. He's going to go to a madrasa, he's going to become a mufti. He's going to go to madrasa, he's going to become a mufassir. He's going to go to madrasa, he's going to become a muhaddith. They competed in that. Like our children are born and then our parents say he's going to become a doctor, he's going to become a lawyer. There was no concept of that. Everybody went to a madrasa. So imagine Imam Ghazali at his time that he is the head of the madrasa, he's the head of the Harvard of the madrasas. So think of him as the president of Harvard. And he writes in his book that I did not have true Islam. I was the head of the madrasa, but I didn't have true Islam. People would come to me, they would ask me for Islam, but I wasn't experiencing the deen. I knew there was something wrong. So what did he decide to do? He said, I found that there were 4 major subjects, and I decided to submit myself to them completely and see if there was truth and reality in them. So first he went to logic, then he went to philosophy, then he went to a 3rd subject, and then he went to tasawwuf. That was the 4th subject. After he completed the 3 subjects, he said, I didn't find truth in either of these 3 subjects, so now I went to tasawwuf. But he writes Sufism, but he's saying what he needs is tasawwuf. I went to the people of Allah. He said the problem was that but the problem with tasawwuf is you can't read it from a book. And here I am, the head of the greatest madrasa, one of the greatest madrasas. I'm the main person. The whole world comes to me for fatwa and for information and for guidance. And I can't leave my position and go sit in some cave and do dhikr all day because I can't do that. I didn't feel like I could do that. So he says for 6 months, every day I woke up. And for 6 months I said, inshallah, today I'm going to go. I have to go. I'm fake. I'm not real. I haven't experienced this deen. I have to go. Every day he woke up for 6 months. And then he said, no, I have to stay here because I'm doing this for the people. What will the people think? And I'm doing that for the people. So every single day he woke up like that. Then he says, after 6 months, one day I woke up and I lost my voice. And I said, this is a sign from Allah because now I can't lecture anymore and I can't benefit the people anymore. So I took my stuff and I went to Syria, to Damascus. And I sat in the minaret of the masjid of Damascus and I went to the biggest person I could find, the biggest ahl tasawwuf, the biggest person of tasawwuf, the biggest shaykh I could find. And I began to train myself in the dhikr of Allah. And after that, he says, that's where I found reality. And it's written, you should read this book, From Error to Guidance. It's a very famous book. It's very thin. It's 40 pages. It's a thin little book like this. But it's written in his own words. In the first person, he's describing his own life events. Then what happened? He began to understand the importance of dhikr and the importance of following the sunnah. Now if you read his ihya, what does it talk about? It talks about eating on the ground. And it talks about how you're supposed to eat and how you're supposed to walk and how you're supposed to... And it has all the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in it. It's loaded with the sunnah. Why? Because he found the secrets of the deen locked in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. No person better understood how to get closer to Allah than the Prophet. And no person was destined to get closer to Allah than the Prophet ﷺ. So those sunnahs are not random. They're not there just for us to read about. They're there for us to inculcate in our lives. And when we do so, you attract the barakah of Allah. And when you attract the barakah of Allah, your money becomes more valuable, your time becomes more valuable, your sleep becomes more valuable, your work becomes more valuable. Everything begins to act on a new level. And things that people do in a month, you do in a night. Literally, I'm telling you, when I was in the madrasa, and I was completely in that environment, I look back at the work that I did, and I see that in one night I did there what I do in 1 month over here. And I look back, and I look at my notes, and I say, God, I haven't done this much in 1 month, and I cannot believe that I did this in 1 month. And I look at some of the notebooks that I have, I'm just shocked at what happened over there. I'm just shocked, and that's all because I was in that environment. It's that environment, they created such an environment that it just produces enormous amount of barakah. So this is the secret of life. This is the secret of success. So people complain about their sleep. People complain about their eating too much. People complain that there's not enough barakah in their time. People complain that their wealth isn't going far enough. People complain that they're not able to study Arabic. This is the answer. It's a single answer. And it's that you have to learn to attract the barakah of Allah by following the methods of the Prophet ﷺ as taught to us by the Sahaba and as carried on by every generation thereafter. And up to this day and age, there are these people that exist in the world. We've been blindsided by the technology of the 21st century, but there are still people in the world that know these secrets. And I experienced it, and they're not few and far between, they're present. They are few and far between, but they're present. But this is the secret. So if you want to know the secret, anybody who asks me any questions, this is the answer. Because this is the thing that people complain about most. I'm eating and I don't get full. I'm eating too much and I'm still not full. I sleep 8 hours a night and I not only do I sleep too much, but my sleep is not relieved. My prayers are empty. I pray, but I don't get anywhere. Yeah, because you don't have the vehicle. You're driving a broken down car with 4 flat tires. You're not going to get anywhere. Submit to the Sunnah, and you'll be in a new vehicle, the vehicle of the Sunnah. And not only will your prayers take you to new levels, but your life will take you to new levels. The levels experienced by the Sahaba and those people that came after them. So anyway, this is the key thing, and this is our dhikr. And people say, oh, well, what's the dhikr of of this group and that group? I'm telling you what our dhikr is right now. Our dhikr is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. That's the secret of the dhikr. Sitting down and doing dhikr, that has its own place. I'm not turning that down. But our dhikr is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. That's the secret. That's the continuous dhikr. When you emulate the Prophet ﷺ, you are continuously in dhikr. And in fact, my shaykh taught me that rather than doing mujahidah after mujahidah after mujahidah to achieve something in this deen, the truest mujahidah is submitting to the sunnah. So sitting and not eating for 10 days, that's the type of mujahidah and it has its benefits. But to submit to the sunnah is the truest of the mujahidah. Because that is the mechanism that the Prophet ﷺ used to attain closeness to Allah. That's the secret of the deen. And when you begin to emulate the Prophet's 24-hour life, then your life will change. And not only will your life change, but you'll change the people around you, and you'll change the people in your community, and the world will meet a force that they've never met before. That's the secret of the Sunnah. So anyway, that's what I want to put in, this concept of barakah. Keep this in mind, because it applies to everything that you do. This concept of barakah, it's very, very essential to our progress. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.